Welcome back to another edition of New Mexico Rising. Today we're going to have a conversation with Louie Sanchez. He's an Albuquerque native, sales executive, and business owner. He is also the Republican gubernatorial candidate, and we're going to have a discussion with him about his solutions to what ails New Mexico. Stay tuned.
Today on New Mexico Rising, we're going to be speaking with Louie Sanchez. Raised by a traditional Hispanic family in the South Valley of Albuquerque, New Mexico, Mr. Sanchez went on to become the first of nearly 40 cousins to graduate from college, having studied business, political science, and communications at the University of New Mexico. Over the last 30 years, he's parlayed his education into a career in management and sales and now works as a rep for the medical technology company Medtronic. He's also a part of the ownership group for Caliber's Shooting Sports Center in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Mr. Sanchez campaigned in the Republican primary for U.S. Senate in 2020, but ultimately ended his bid, citing lack of name recognition as the biggest problem, but admonished his supporters by saying, "This is not the end for Team Louie Sanchez." He's currently running for the Republican gubernatorial nomination, and we're looking forward to hearing more about his proposed solutions to everything going on in New Mexico, as well as his aspirations for the future. But before we get into any of that, I guess we've got to deal with what is on everybody's minds, including ours and the production team and everywhere else. Thad, you and I have talked extensively, be it on other shows or behind the scenes here, about these federal vaccine mandates, and lay it on us about how you're feeling, because it definitely directly affects you.
Pissed. I'm pissed at the process. I'm pissed at the overreach. But most importantly, I'm kind of pissed at myself, right? We all wanted to reinvent ourselves in 2020. And I'm pissed at myself because last year I didn't put myself in a financial position to resist. And now, because of that failing, I'm possibly going to put my health at jeopardy. But let's kind of break down like the mandate in and of itself from OSHA. It's unenforceable at the federal level. So I think everyone getting kind of wee-weed up about it. There's a bureaucracy involved with proposing a rule, putting that rule out there, having people comment on that rule, stuff like that. All that is kind of governmental minutia to cover their rear ends. But realistically, from a federal level, that it's going to be a long time before we see anything big from that. But however, states have that right. And the institutions, public and private, support this wholeheartedly. They are the branch COVIDians. They're devout, they're zealous, and they're absolutely relentless. Why? They have control of all the bureaucracies, every commercial entity. So there's nothing that can be really done about it right away. They've kind of become a slave to this myth of the unvaccinated being the chief vectors of spread, which isn't true. And that the Delta variant as a mutation is a result of not enough people getting vaccinated. Not here in the States. In India, yes, but not here in the States. So these institutions will enforce this, not because of a law. They didn't need the Biden administration to say this. They literally just they're down with it, right? And this is how they'll attack. The president's speech is basically was made specifically to provoke. And it will lose in court eventually. However, this basically just continues to put the last nails in the coffin of national social cohesion. But there's a broader concern about this, right? So particularly we're going to discuss here about like how it's going to affect like workers here in the state. I've been kind of harping on this thing because I've been reading a lot of articles, and I didn't come up with this term, but this is called there's this thing called the Great Resignation. And it's basically people having learned from the last year that, work-life balance is much more important, pursuing what you want to pursue, making yourself financially independent, because a lot of people, not a bunch, but a lot, were considered non-essential, lost their jobs, and were forced to live off of the dole. So even if you enforce this vaccine mandate via backdoor, coercion, OSHA, whatever you want to use, say you get to 80%, 85%, 90%, you're not going to get there, I might add, because we're already, from a one dose perspective, 75% of the adult population is already, vaccinated, at least inoculated with one dose. What do you think the other 10% are going to do? So, and of those of us who have to bend a knee, inevitably, how productive do you think we're going to be?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, like, you've just caused immense damage to the employee-employer relationship going forward. And I honestly think that's by design. And the left's accelerationism toward this global reset is going to, they think they're going to build like utopia from the ashes, but I don't think it's going to be the outcome they think is going to happen. And there are way more consequences to this, even if this never, ever sees the light of day.
I think that's fair. I think, now's as good as any time to really think about what it is we're doing. I know in my own life, I've got to look at my businesses. I'm not at all interested in enforcing any of this stuff with anybody that works under me, any way, shape, or form. So when you talk about the resignation, I mean, for me, it's basically here. They have drawn a line in the sand, and that I can't cross over. I will not. It's not going to happen. And as an essential businessman, obviously plumbing, for those of you that don't know, I've run for years. I see no interest for me or any of the guys I've worked with. The guys that have worked with me and around me, they're all very angry at this. Their attitude is that they were put out in the field and dealing with this for the past, almost 2 years now. And now you're telling them that they need to do something to keep people safe or keep themselves safe or anything. I'm telling you right now, these guys don't want to hear it. And it's going to cause problems. And like you say, they may take it and they may keep their job. But if you think productivity is going to increase because of this, you're dreaming. And everything's going to get more expensive, and it's just going to continue getting uglier. So that's kind of my end on that too. We'll kind of pull back a little bit from this, and we'll go ahead and get our guest on. Mr. Sanchez, how are you doing?
Gentlemen, thank you for having me on today, and thank you for getting my blood boiling too, because I've seen that from so many ends, as you guys know. Shawn, you hit it right on the head. I mean, your business is essential. My business was essential last year, when she tried to close businesses, and I think we all know what happened when I told her basically to go pound sand. I wasn't going to close Calibers. Yeah. Because just like you gentlemen, I mean, she's never invested. Our governor's never invested her own money in a business. She's never had to sit there and trust New Mexicans to support that business. And so, it's interesting we say, I'm going to fix my camera here too.
No, that's fine.
To take shots from the cheap seats. And that's what she was doing from the cheap seats. It's easy for her when she received a paycheck and her administration received a paycheck every 2 weeks. And she gave her administration raises. But she wanted us to go to our employees and saying, guess what? Oh, you guys need to go home for public safety because you're not essential. Well, as I've said to everybody, my business is essential. My employees are essential. So that's why we refuse to close. And I feel strongly about the vaccine because since Roe versus Wade, what happened to my body, my choice? And that's what it should be. Nobody should ever be mandated, ever, to put something foreign in their body that they don't want. Mm-hmm. But that's, that issue said it right. So many people are on unemployment right now. So many people are collecting unemployment benefits that we become almost a socialistic communistic state with the fact that the government now holds the purse strings. Mm-hmm. You wear a mask or you're not going to get your checks. Get a vaccine or you're not going to get your checks. Get a vaccine or you're not going to be at your job. this isn't what this country's about. It's just, we're getting to the point now where, it's been said so many times over history. This is the tipping point. We're on the edge, whatever acronym you want to use, but this is truly it. And they're pushing it as far as they can get right now, where we are giving away our civil liberties. And at some point, we need to push back against government. And and the nice thing is that's what our Constitution allows us to do. And we as voters and citizens of this state need to remember that she works for us. She isn't a queen. She isn't a dictator. She's our governor, and she's supposed to govern. She's not supposed to dictate. So sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No. That's the whole point of this. At some point, we can let's kind of pump the brakes just a little bit, a little bit,
or we'll just keep going on this.
Well, here's the thing: we've got plenty of time to rip into all these issues. There's been some interesting things, even with the merger with P&M, with Iberdrola and Avangrid, and I definitely want to get your take on that. Avangrid, but let's like I say, let's pump the brakes. We'll kind of relax just for a minute. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your New Mexican experience? Because you read somebody's bio, it only says so much. So kind of give us your journey to this point in time where you're now saying, well, I guess I'd better run for governor.
Sure. So, you hit around the head. I started, if everybody knows where the aquarium is in the valley, right there off Rio Grande. And so that's where I started life at. We had a small little trailer right outside the aquarium. Actually, you run straight into it when you drive out of the aquarium going north. And the cool thing about living there is that there was a Village Inn behind our house. You woke up every morning to the smell of bacon and pancakes. And, but that's where we started. My father came from the South Valley, what we call like the South Broadway or San Jovadio, right there on Broadway and Stadium. My mom is from Borellis, right there by the zoo. And we grew up as a typical Hispanic family. And, my father was changing tires at Sears, and my mom was a cashier. And so but you know what, though? We were brought up, I guess, as 90% of every Hispanic family. We were brought up with a love of God, a love of family, respect for both. And the fact that we worked hard, that's what we did. And that's why another one of these situations, I'm going to go off a little tangent. That's why it gets my blood boiling when I hear about critical race theory. Yeah. Because being one of the only Hispanics in the race, of course, I always get asked about that, and I give my same response. I think it's a bunch of crap. My parents didn't bring myself or my brother or my sister up to be victims. They didn't. They brought us up to that if we wanted to go for the golden ring, then go grab it. The American dream's out there, and that's how we were brought up. But without digressing. So,
digress.
So we just kept going. We worked for everything. I had a job since I was 13 years old. I used to clean toilets and mow yards at Putt Putt for anybody who was around here way back then, and worked my way through high school. And how I became a Republican, I always get asked. And I remember my dad being Hispanic, lifelong Democrats. That's all they were. But my dad loved Reagan. And I remember I was 17 years old. I graduated from high school early. Didn't know what I wanted to do. Nobody in my family had ever gone to college. So my father brought me in and said, listen, mijo, I want you to listen to the president and his Reagan. And he was talking to Hispanic high school kids in California. And I remember it hit me to this day. I still remember it's not where you start, it's where you finish. And that this country allows for anybody to grab the American dream, no matter how hard you work. And it inspired me. And all of a sudden I turned around and my dad's all, what'd you think? And I told him, it's like, I think I want to go to college. And he looked at me and he goes, college? He goes, I just wanted you to go get a job. And so I did. I saved as much money as I could. I worked through college, which was so beneficial to me. I learned how to do construction, landscaping. I was a line cook. Oh my gosh, waiter, everything. But when I was in college, I used to wash dishes at the sororities, because if you wash dishes, you could eat lunch and dinner for free. Mm-hmm. And I actually met my wife washing dishes, which was funny. She didn't think much about me at the time. But 3 years later, she did. And so I've been married.
Well, that was a good come up then in 3 years.
Absolutely. So, but so many great things happen, of course, when you just go after the American dream. In college, I had the opportunity to volunteer for Senator Domenici, worked on his campaign, and then I was got picked to be one of his interns up in DC. So right out of college, I went to DC, worked for Senator Domenici, then public affairs in the USDA. And then I came back to Albuquerque because I just love the state. I've always loved the state. And started my medical career. I was able to get on with a medical career. And then now, almost 30 years later, I implant pacemakers and defibrillators all over the state. And so that's what I do. And then for the last, 12 years? Yes, I've been one of the majority owners of Calibers shooting ranges. So, it's interesting when everybody says, oh, are you going to protect our Second Amendment rights? Well, we've been trying to protect them, 10 years ago, 10 days ago, and we'll still be trying to protect Second Amendment rights in the state of Mexico 10 years from now. So that's kind of where I'm at today. Have my beautiful wife we're going to be going 26 years, 2 amazing kids. And then we're going to start this journey going down governor. And by the way, I do have to say, when we quit the run for Senate, I quit it because I made a promise. Okay. At the pre-primary, I had made a promise, and I'd campaigned with the fact that if I didn't finish in the top 2, I would not split the vote. And I ended up coming in third, I think like 12, 14 votes right behind Mark Ronchetti. Sure. But I thought it has to start somewhere with the Republican Party, that we keep our promises and that we try and bring this party together. So at that point, even though we could have got on and we had the votes to go on and the signatures, I decided to do the right thing to step aside and let Elisa and Mark go after it. So, sure. But you're right though. We got a lot of name recognition. So when last year, when the governor just started basically taking away all of our civil liberties, I was asked if I would consider running for governor, and because I do have experience starting and running businesses in the medical field also, and Second Amendment rights. And I think people know now that I am not afraid to stand up to her, or stand up for what's right. So that's where we're at today. Now I'm here with you, fine gentlemen.
Oh, yeah. Well, we appreciate it, man. So, all right. So let's talk governorship, what's going to happen here. So this past Friday, I guess we recorded like 20 additional deaths. Okay, it's the longest single day total in like months. Mm-hmm. I hear rumblings about the reimposition or the continuation of the emergency health orders. We're going to be coming up on that here in the next couple of days and stuff like that. I'm just going to let you riff on the emergency health orders. What do you think? What do you, as governor, obviously, what would you do differently than what has already been done over the last 18 months?
Well, I'll tell you what I heard a speech by Governor Kristi Noem, and I talked to her personally when the Republicans had their convention in Amarillo, and it's pretty eye-opening on what she said. She told me flat out, she goes, Louie, everybody thinks I did this amazing thing. Everybody thinks that I did this incredible thing, that I was fighting the system. She goes, all I did was talk to the state attorneys, and I did what the state constitution allowed me to do. Imagine that. A governor actually allowing the citizens of her state to be responsible for their own health. Citizens of the state being responsible for their own businesses. I could tell you something I won't do as governor. So if this ever comes up again, I will never close this state down, ever. I truly feel that all small businesses are essential, and you don't pick, it wouldn't be my job, and it's not her job to pick winners and losers. So, and what I mean by that is that we lost 40% of our small businesses, but she allowed for big box stores to stay open when everybody knows.
And expand.
Yes, and expand. Right. And if you just do the simple math, if they allow 1,000 people in a day, which is just, on the low side, through all the box stores in the state, she's allowing over 1 million opportunities for cross-contamination for COVID. But yet, as small businesses, we won't get 1 million people in all of our stores combined in a year. So being in healthcare, I also see what happens when you mandate masks. The interesting thing about it is they're like, well, masks, we need to wear masks. The problem is probably 90% of the whole population doesn't wear a mask right. When we're in the hospitals, we wear clean masks every single patient. Anytime we see a patient, we change our mask. We also get N95s. We also get fitted for masks. So, mask, best case scenario is 30% effective. So they're doing more harm than good. And let us control our own businesses. I can control if I allow 100 people in calibers or if I only allow 20 people in calibers. So I think that we as citizens of New Mexico need to take this state back. I don't think anybody should ever be mandated to have to take a vaccine. And I'm not an anti-vaxxer, and I've been completely honest with everybody. I did get vaccinated. And the reason I got vaccinated, though, is because I probably see about 150 to 200 people in cardiology clinic a month. And so, and just because of that, and most of my patients have heart failure or some kind of cardiomyopathy. So, but there's members of my family who aren't vaccinated, and it's their choice. It's their choice. And same thing I tell my friends. It's their choice if they want to take it or not. Because this is my issue, you guys. As of this time last year, no, I think they were barely starting to put any vaccines in humans at all. And now it's supposed to be the best thing since sliced bread. And I know you guys have heard the same interview between Biden and Kamala Harris when they both were anti-vax because it was under Trump last year. But now they want to force people to take this vaccine. So
and that's the thing. I mean, for them, it's a political issue.
Exactly.
It really has no basis in reality because, quite frankly, the more we learn about the virus, the less dangerous it became over the course of the last 2 years. And the more we learn about the vaccine, all we keep seeing is how ineffective it is.
Right.
It prevents neither infection or transmission, but everyone wants to run around and blame it on crazies like me who look at it and go, nah, I'm not going to get that.
Yeah.
So the data doesn't add up. It just doesn't add up, no matter how you look at it. Even when they talk about how 91% of the cases in the hospitals in New Mexico are amongst the unvaccinated. Well, the problem with that is they're not even they include
people who
unvaccinated as people who have either gotten one shot or have gotten 2 shots,
right,
and haven't gone 14 days. And as we kind of beat up on Scrace, and I'm happy to do it again, in the last show, they asked him how many of those people that accounted for, and it was just a bunch of I don't know. So that's what we're getting from our governor and that administration right now, and it's pretty much the same on a national level. It's very
absolutely
it's highly frustrating.
Well, Shawn, what's also frustrating is the fact that I talked to state representatives this last 2 weeks. We have the only governor who still has her emergency powers. They had the votes to strip her emergency powers. And apparently, the Democrats who are going to vote to strip her of emergency powers and just, for the action, God, imagine that, the legislature actually being the legislature instead of, us having a queen, Democrats got pulled back into a room, had the vote, and the vote failed, and she kept her powers. So
which doesn't bode well for the 15th.
Right. And there's so many rumors about, why is she looking to close this down, on the 15th or the 20th? Everybody knows she's getting married. But the rules don't apply to everybody, right? It only applies if you're a conservative or if you don't want to get vaccinated or if you don't want to wear a mask. But when Deb Haaland has her wedding, nobody's wearing masks and they didn't check vaccine cards. So it's not a fair playing field. We need to make, as you guys know, we could go off for 4 hours and tell everybody what's the matter with this state. But I think we need to talk about how we fix this state more off, because everybody knows we have one of the worst governors in the whole United States. So,
well, and I think that's part of the conversation. I mean, obviously, there's the issue. Otero County Commission had a special meeting on the 9th, and they discussed the county's approach to any future public health mandates. They approved a resolution opposing any sort of public health orders, and they called them unconstitutional. Now it's come back and everybody says no, and we've been through that in the courts. And I think that's a frustration, even when Thaddeus talks about how, this federal mandate will get defeated in the courts. A lot of people are looking at the way the courts have behaved and they're saying, will it? Do we have any faith in the justice system anymore? Because we've had, multiple attorneys on this show. I've spoken to multiple attorneys elsewhere, and there is not a lot of faith in the justice system anymore.
Particularly here in the state.
Right, particularly in this state, because Lord knows that our courts are loaded now with progressive judges. I mean, geez, all we have to look is the crime issues that we have in this state. The fact where was it just last week a criminal was charged with first-degree murder. Judge let him out on his own recognizance, no bail, and they put a ankle monitor on him. And guess what? He cut it off. Imagine that. It's like, hey, we're trusting you to come back here and come to court so we can sentence you for the rest of your life. Yeah. And so it's just, I mean, you guys were just a mess. And that's the problem with New Mexico is that, you know, we are completely the definition of insanity here. We are. We do the same thing every single time. And it's interesting. I've had big talks with members of my own family with the fact that, well, why do you vote for the same people? Well, they all do the same thing. It's like, well, of course they do, because we send the same people up there and we expect for a different result to happen. And it just doesn't happen. So.
Yeah, no, I mean, in particularly, you know, we're trying to reach out a little bit more to people from the South, which is, to ask these questions. I mean, they're a huge contributor to the GDP of the state between natural, energy and dairy and the like. And yeah, we had Christina Arnold on, and they just feel like no one's listening to them, not at all. And it doesn't matter how many times they've gone in front of the judiciary to basically get a redress of some sort of grievance from this and stuff like that. They just get ignored. Case in point here, we now have PNM owned by a Spanish energy conglomerate, who has had a history because we're corralling toward this great reset. We're like, we must have renewables. We don't have to look that far to see what a over-reliance on renewables does. All you got to do is go to Texas, which is like one of our biggest oil producers, and what they went through. In Maine, they ever since they've basically allowed this avant-garde, I can't pronounce the other side of it, take over their municipal power, or at least the regional power, they've had more outages now than they've had before. Why? Because of this over-reliance on these renewable energy mandates that are inevitably going to cause even more problems. It's like you said, this definition of insanity is like, we'll do what California does because, you know, we're progressive and we love this stuff.
Yeah,
right?
That's great.
Yeah, that's great.
Worked out well for California, hasn't it? With everybody moving from California to Texas. So.
Right. And then it worked out well for Texas, who kind of drunk a little bit of that Kool-Aid in West Texas by building all these, windmills and not understanding that it's a very intermediate power source. You're going to need some sort of backup. You don't, I think it's madness. So I don't know how familiar you are with this kind of merger, PNM or acquisition of PNM by this avant-garde group. There's people don't like the way it smells. I don't know if you have anything or any thoughts on that.
Well, I do. And, you always know how bad it smells when the media is so in favor of it. And it's getting so much popular opinion from the local media here in the state, right? Because the big deal is, well, they're going to invest $200 million in future technologies. Well, great. Well, guess what? Our oil and gas industries contribute $3 billion a year to New Mexico. 40% of the state budget, and it's over $700 million goes to education. How do we replace that? And then the governor's sitting there telling us, it's like, oh, well, we're going to replace all these oil worker jobs with good paying green energy jobs. Well, maybe I'm naive, but I haven't seen exactly a lot of windmill factories or solar panel factories coming up here in New Mexico. And I was just down south, y'all, and and everybody keeps asking me, well, are you for oil? And how about the environment? Well, you know what? I am an oil and gas guy, because you don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially that much for your budget. You just don't. Everybody knows there's going to be a transition, but you have to transition. You just don't cut it off at the knees, especially when it's so valuable to the state. And one of the oil guys I was talking to said, just in oil workers, and they're talking about drillers, pipe fitters, welders, water people, containment, 66,000 six-figure jobs. And if you're looking at the whole southeast part of New Mexico, that contributes to everything that makes that Permian Basin work. It's 122,000 people that could be out of work, that she's looking at putting out of work. We will never replace that, ever. And you said personal experience that. So just real quick, my son goes to Abilene Christian University. He sat there for a week and a half without any power in his dorm. We finally just told him to come home. It was that bad. And they couldn't get any. Like, literally everything shut off. And so he finally just ended up just driving home from. And it's Texas, right? It's
right,
Texas.
Exactly. The cultish nature of this green energy it's almost as cultish as They are affectionately known on the program, the Branch Covidians.
Yeah. Yes.
And and that's not mine. Like, I've heard that somewhere, but it's very clever. And they're just having us careen toward this.
Exactly.
And like when and you break down like why things went wrong in Texas, and it's because the grids are not built for these renewable sources. And until we up the use of, I don't know, nuclear, or until we we figure out how to build these giant gigawatt battery backup factories, which ended up have their own issues, particularly in cold weather, you're never going to build a reliable enough grid. And I just think it's complete madness. And when we get to next summer, because these mandates are going to start, these mandates for renewable energy for PNM are going to go into overdrive here soon. And of course, Shawn can attest to this. They've been wanting to close the coal producing, energy producing coal plant up there in his neck of the woods for years. And I think they're going to finally get their way.
Right. Hey, Shawn, how much they put in? They put in what? The city put in $20 million into the Four Corners power plant to try and get it to burn clean, and they got it there, and they're still going to close it.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
still going to close it down. And this is just the absurdity of everything that we see, whether we're talking about now, the governor is signed on to this 30-30 initiative where she's going to preserve 30% of public land from development over the next decade, it's just more of them, encroaching on the ability of New Mexicans and Americans in general to produce anything here. And this is where I say at some point you have to look at this and you have to say, well, is this incompetence or not? If it's not incompetence, these things that they're doing that are destroying our ability to create power, jobs, and everything else for ourselves, then they're doing it on purpose.
Right. Well, and Shawn, it's just pure incompetence. I mean, look what happened up in Farmington 6 years ago when they, oil and gas was booming. As you know, you couldn't come up 550. All you'd see was just wells going up, and but Farmington was just exploding. Everything, Sportsman's Warehouse, Chick-fil-A, everything, Sleep Number. I mean, housing was going ballistic. Everybody was moving up there. It was amazing. All of a sudden, oil and gas goes away, and you saw what happened in Farmington, Bloomfield, and Aztec area. Halliburton pulls out, ConocoPhillips pulls out. They lose 2,400 jobs. They start losing doctors. It's, the oil fields out there built San Juan Hospital to what it is today. They had one of the top cardiology programs in the state, which is amazing for Farmington. So, you don't get in the way of progress. You don't. We all know there's going to be a transition. There probably is, but that is, you're right. Why aren't we, instead of giving all this money to a foreign entity, why aren't we investing in ourselves and actually building? If they want clean energy, this isn't, the nuclear power plants at 3 Mile Island. These are new state-of-the-art nuclear power plants where we actually have uranium mines in New Mexico, and we could produce jobs and we could produce clean energy. It doesn't make sense. And I guarantee you the good people of the Four Corners would be just jumping at that. It's wow. I don't understand what she does. So sorry.
Yeah, these are the same. Yeah, no. We're loving it. We're loving it.
I get passionate about this stuff. So let's keep going.
Let's kind of, we say we want to find solutions. And I think part of what a lot of New Mexicans are looking for, especially me when it comes to any sort of gubernatorial candidate, okay, what I'm going to look at is what are they doing now? Because we don't have time, from what I see, to wait around. Whether you're talking about these vaccine mandates, whether you're talking about the restrictions on businesses, at some point there has to be major pushback. The courts have not done their job, according to a lot of people. So, that's kind of my question to you when we talk about solutions is what do we need to be doing right now? What do you think New Mexicans ought to be doing in the moment to push back against this? Because many people have reached their breaking point.
Well, what can we do right now? It's going to be interesting because we need to come together as a community, and it's going to start this November. Okay, so right now, if you think about it, we have 2 months until the next elections, and we need to start putting in people who are actually going to fulfill their promises to the citizens of this state. And what I mean by that is that this is one thing that gets me upset, Shawn, and I saw this when I ran for the Senate, is that you get you get all these candidates sitting on a soapbox and, preaching to these citizens how they're going to keep fighting for New Mexicans and they're always going to have their best interests. All of a sudden, they lose a primary or they don't win their election and they just go vapor. Last summer, when some of the candidates who I campaigned with were going around making promises to New Mexicans that I'll keep fighting for you, we're going to put New Mexico first, and all of a sudden then they just go away. When they could have put their big names behind us and behind some of these movements that are going forward. And as you guys have seen, some of these rallies aren't small. At Civic Plaza, we had a small business rally. We had 1,500 people there. Yeah. So I think we need to make sure that they know that this November, they're going to get taught a lesson up in the state legislature for the positions that we have opened up. And next November, we need New Mexicans to be involved. But how we get people involved is that we actually need conservatives to start going into places where they don't want to go into. It's easy to go get Republican votes down in Eddy and Chaves County. But how about the 500,000 votes that are in the South Valley or South Central or the West Mesa? No Republicans ever go there.
Yeah, and play it to those cultural values when you go to the South Valley.
I'll tell you guys what, we already know how the Democrats are going to play this election. We know it. They played it in 2008, 2010, 12, every year there's elections. And we refuse to think that they're going to play by those rules. And what are those rules? They call us as conservatives. And, that is you're black. I'm obviously Mexican. But they do, right? They call us racist, white supremacists, that we are all people of privilege. And you know what? We need to go in and instead of playing defense and being on our heels, we need to start playing offense and actually calling them out for what they are. They do. So how do we get back? We start making sure that people are educated, Shawn. We go into these neighborhoods, and I went into the South Valley. I already had a rally in South Valley, and I showed the people in the South Valley exactly what their representatives were voting for. Hispanics have never, ever voted for abortion. But yet they put the same people in office, and they didn't realize that their representatives had actually voted for third-term abortions. They actually didn't know that the representatives, were the ones that keep New Mexico taxing their Social Security. They thought it was Republicans. So we need to educate.
In a state that Republicans haven't technically controlled on a legislative level for a long
90 years. I know. But that's our fault, though, you guys. That's our fault. So yes, I am going into there, and honestly, it's no big deal for me to go into those places because my whole family's still there. So I'm just going to see my aunts and uncles and my cousins. So I am. That's what I'm doing. How are we going to win, Shawn? You had asked that question. How are we going to bring this home? I am. You know what? I'm going to go find those votes. I am. I'm going to go find those votes because I represent 50% of this population, which is Hispanic in New Mexico. And both of you guys know it's time for truth in this party and truth on these elections, you guys. And, out of half of this population, I probably represent the way 99% of them are all brought up. And I'm going to go into these sections of this state where no Republican has gone. And you know what? We're going to educate and we're going to build a movement like we already have. And we're going to bring this thing home. I guarantee. Yeah. But this thing has to start this November from the mayor election on. We have to. And if we don't, our crime's going to be the worst in the nation. Education's going to be the worst in the nation. And we're just going to be, it's just going to keep going and going and going. So,
well, and it is going to just keep going and going. And it's, when you say that, people need to get offensive, in the Republican Party, which I think in general, people who believe in freedom need to start stepping up for this.
Right.
And, all honesty, I'm not a Republican. I will never be a Republican. I don't assign to parties. But it's like when you see that and we talk about everything, again, I'm going to reference people back to the episode that we did with Erin Clements. The things that she showed us in regards to the election and the statistical impossibilities involved therein, they need to be hammered on. And what a lot of people are saying is, what is the point of voting until you get that figured out and that fixed? Right. This is why this country, this state, and everything else is in such a bad situation, is because they just want to say, well, January 6th happened, so let's just always ignore it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Let's ignore it now. Good old W got up there yesterday and wanted to compare everyone who was at the Capitol that day to Al-Qaeda flying airplanes into buildings.
Right.
And it's weird for me as someone who was never supportive of W. Never, not once. I voted for him, and then I said, well, that was a dumb idea. And I watched this whole thing fall apart over the years, and it's like I'm finally seeing people recognize how silly those decisions were. But and now it's too late. But now the Republican Party, sir, the large majority of the establishment would like to just ignore it.
Absolutely.
They would like to ignore it.
No, you're absolutely right. And that's why, I am considered an outsider on this because I don't agree with a lot of the direction the Republican Party is going, because we've gone the same direction. And, and the interesting thing is that we always nominate these people to run in this state, and then we get waxed in every election. And then we always wonder why. And then what do we always say, gentlemen? We always say, oh, it's going to be different next time. Our message is going to be different next time. It's interesting because I brought up that issue with going and getting these votes, a lot of Hispanic votes in this state. And I was like, well, how are you guys going to do that? And it's like, oh, well, we're going to get to them with our message. It's like, it's just white noise. That's all it is.
It's a nebulous way of basically saying, well, what's your concrete plan to get that message to the quote unquote Hispanic voters that you need to reach?
Right. And it's, and I don't know how this is coming across, because I'm not saying I'm just going to run on my last name. I'm not. I'm definitely qualified for this. I run a $14 million business with my medical, the calibers we're almost at that also. But I have the passion to run this. And, this is going to be a campaign of just common sense. And how are we going to do that? I'm literally going to do what any of you would do. I'm going to go through my first month. I'm going to go through every department we have in this state. And you know what? Excuses are like, you guys know what? Everybody has one. And if you're doing your job mediocre, you're gone. Because if somebody's working for me that's mediocre, I fire them. Mm-hmm. And there's no reason we should have people in these positions for 20, 30 years just for political appointees, because the state suffers. We're going to not defund the police, but we're going to refund the police and give them the facilities and the equipment that they need to go do their job. We're going to give them back their qualified immunity back. They can't do their job scared. They just can't do that. We're going to send the National Guard down to the southern border and secure our border. Heck, we leave they always talk, well, how about the humanity? Well, how about the humanity of the fact that we leave the country in child poverty? Or unemployment. Where's that humanity? We can't take care of anybody else's kids if we can't even take care of our own. So, and then of course, we're going to focus on jobs. One thing I'd like to do, honestly, is I'd like to take a look at how we spend our permanent fund. Right now, our whole permanent fund is invested in out-of-state companies. Well, why don't we invest in in-state companies, or actually make it attractive for them to come here by reducing our gross receipts tax, by taking down our regulations? What gets me mad is the fact that we had Tesla and they left to California. And then they just left California and they drove through New Mexico to get to Texas, to put their headquarters in Texas. Hewlett Packard just did the same thing. Oracle just did the same thing. But why would they stop here? You know what I mean? We don't make it attractive, because just a quick story. So with one of my companies I worked for, the COO came here, loved New Mexico. We took them all up the state, took them to Farmington, Roswell, Albuquerque. We're sitting at El Pinto. I remember that. And he said, why aren't we here? Why are we in Minnesota? He goes, it's freezing in the winter, blazing in the summer. And he goes, you guys have land, water, and the resources. Like, great. And we're going to build a brand new plant. 6-figure jobs building the first MRI safe pacemakers in the world. Called us a week later. They would never let me go to New Mexico. You guys are overtaxed, overregulated, of course, worst in crime, last in education, blah, blah, blah. So they put that whole manufacturing plant in Tempe, Arizona. That's what we lose out on every single time. And it's time that somebody finally stands up and does something about it. It's the nice thing about me, though, Shawn, you'd ask me, makes me different a little bit, is I don't have lobbyists. I don't have people. I have my family, and I know how business runs in this state. And that's what I do for a living. I go get business. And with that, I also don't put up with mediocre performances from employees. If you're not going to do the job, there's always somebody else who will. So that's what we do. We just treat small businesses the way they should be treated, and we take care of who's taking care of us, which is, as of right now, it's the oil industry, the horse racing industry, even our auto dealerships. Everything she closed were like 3/4 of our whole state budget.
Yeah.
So sorry, I'll quit rambling.
No, and and again to that, we have got to start thinking now. I mean, look, the way things are headed, I see another lockdown coming. Now, I could be crazy, but I haven't had a track record of being crazy over the last year. I think we're going to see another lockdown, and
particularly this winter.
Yeah. What do you think businesses should do in that situation?
Don't lock down.
Just flat out defy it.
Just defy it. I mean, she can't afford to lose us. I can tell you this: we will not shut down again. We won't. We got fined before. We had state police at our place. I took a couple of the cease and desist personally. She can't afford to do it. She can't, and she knows it. We already lost 40% of our small businesses. What, she wants to lose the other 40?
That's the problem. That's the problem. Again, this is why, to me, dealing with some of these other issues that people have tried to push under the rug are so important, because none of these people, whether you're talking about Biden or MLG, they're not behaving as though they need to get reelected.
Right. Oh, well,
they're behaving as they're behaving as though it's a shoo-in.
Right.
And that's disturbing.
Right.
I can't remember any time in my life where I saw politicians get that weird, and elected officials where they were just like, well, we're just going to do what this is, and we don't care.
Yeah, the closer they get to elections, the more tyrannical they sound and divisive they sound. That's typically not what happens in an election year. It would be political suicide for her to continue with these emergency orders. But there's no consequence.
Right. Well, and you know why, though, Thaddeus and Shawn, is because they're expecting for us as conservatives to run the same kind of milquetoast candidate that we've ran against them before. I mean, she is. When she gets $750,000 from Planned Parenthood and George Soros is going to give her $1 million and such, she knows that the only way we're going to take our state back is this is going to have to be a grassroots effort, and where we need to remind people they can't forget what they went through. They can't forget that. If you guys remember last Christmas and Thanksgiving, we were all standing in line.
We were in food lines.
Yeah, we were in food lines while she was eating $200 a pound ground beef at the mansion. We need to make sure people remember. And the nice thing about my job, gentlemen, is that I travel the whole state. I'm just for work. I'm in Ruidoso and Roswell and Farmington, and I talk to all these small business owners, and people are mad. And I keep telling them, just remember that. Remember what you went through and what she did to your business. Because it's, and the interesting thing is when people who've never ran a business or started a business don't know what they're talking about. Like when she said, well, just turn your lights back on. Well, it doesn't work that way.
Right.
As you guys know, a small business, you carry 60 to 90 days rainy day fund. We just, we turn our lights back on after 6 months, not 60 or 90 days. We're still paying mortgage and insurance, and we're still trying to pay our employees and, capital. All right, guess what? And when Joe and Jane Smith go and finally get their job and their first paycheck, they're not coming to Calibers. They're paying their mortgages. They're paying their insurance. They're paying their kids' schools. So I will never shut down this state. I can make that promise ever, because, it's just not right.
So I guess I'm going to hold you to it. Is with Calibers,
Absolutely.
especially if they shut it down, they lock you down again, and they come to take you to jail. What are you doing?
I guess I'm going to do the same thing I did last time. I'm just going to tell her to go pound sand. Actually, I didn't tell her to pound sand. I told her to kiss something else.
Yeah, well,
I'm
politically correct.
I mean,
don't try
I
too
hope
hard.
so. No,
I've got no patience for it.
It's just like at Calibers right now. If people want to wear masks, wear masks. We're not the mask police. That's what we tell our employees.
Thank you.
It's just, we're not. It's your choice. And so we told our employees too. It's like, if you guys want to wear them, wear them. If you don't, don't.
I don't understand what was so hard about having that that stands, right? I mean, we just had Backstreet Grill. Of course, we had the owner, one of the operators on, early on in the days of this program, and like, all right, they exhausted all measures. I mean, and when we went and we talked to the employees, we talked to the owner himself, and he was just like, I'm not telling them not to. I'm not telling them not to do anything. I'm not even telling my customers not to. Right. But it was just because they were defiant and verbally so, and very loud, they just litigated them out of existence. And then when they closed down that Sunday, the order came down to shut off their power and water. It's like, you already won. It's vindictive. Right. There's something about it that's vindictive.
Oh, absolutely. And as I said before, we're literally, but this is what we need the citizens in New Mexico to understand. They are taking away our civil liberties. Well, they're not even taking them. We're giving them away. Most citizens are just handing them over. And as you gentlemen know, it's once the government gets them, they're not going to give them back. No. They never
Patriot Act.
Yeah.
Authorization for the use of military force.
Right.
Remember all those things that are still in place today.
Exactly. So there we go.
Well, and it's, I think it's important for people to remember that, you bring up the idea of whether your employees wear masks or not. And this applies across the board. And regardless of what Joe Biden says, it is about freedom.
Right.
It is about our personal freedom, because in this country, if I would like to, I should be able to take a vaccine. Right. If I don't want to take a vaccine, I shouldn't have to. If I want to go to McDonald's and order 15 quarter pounders and eat all of those along with a 12-pack of beer and smoke, I don't know how many packs of cigarettes I smoke a day, but it's too much, and just turn into a complete fat mess and die, that's on me. And guess what else? If I want to take ivermectin, I should be allowed to do that as well.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because now the whole, national media spin is like, well, if they don't get a vaccine, maybe we shouldn't treat them in the hospitals. Mm-hmm. And Shawn, you just said it. What are we going to do if somebody's out eating 12 Big Macs a day and they get heart disease, we shouldn't treat them? Or if they're smoking, we shouldn't treat them for lung cancer? I mean, it's ludicrous. It's ludicrous how they're running this, and it's ludicrous how they're treating us. They're treating us like children, not like as adults. But I'll tell you what, I said it before. We better stand up, because, at some point we're not going to be able to get it back. And it's just like, I use the Venezuela effect. Everybody loved it when everybody's getting huge government checks when Chavez took over. All of a sudden, those checks went from $2,000 a month to $1,200 a month to $1,000 to $750, and then we get to what Obama said at the end of it. What are you complaining about? It's free, And then they come and take our guns, and then guess what? Then you start rioting in the streets and protesting in the streets. Well, the Venezuelans were throwing rocks. The government was throwing back bullets. Mm-hmm. So we need to wake up. We need to wake up as a state and a country and defend what's rightfully ours. Because people like my brother, my father, my uncle, they fought for these freedoms. They did. So,
Mr. Sanchez, thank you for coming on. I think that's a great place to just cut it and end it. That had a little bit of inspiration. Not too many black pills. That's where we try to stop here. So, but where can people reach out and contact you?
Well, thank you. Yeah. So my website is louiesanchezforgovernor.com. And just please go to my site, look at who I am. The interesting thing is I'm kind of a good sales rep. So if you ever see me come by, I'll give you a card. I actually put my cell phone on it and I answer it. So it's, I'm just upfront with a lot of things, and I know that I am, I know I'm a political outsider, but I think that's positive. But if you'll go to louiesanchezforgovernor.com, you're going to know exactly who I am. Please send me messages, and thank you, gentlemen, for having me on. I really appreciate you guys.
Man, hey, no appreciate problem. You having you on. Thank you for coming.
Take care, gentlemen.
All right.
Bye.
Baco, what are we doing?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. First, go support Calibers, right?
Yeah,
we should be reaching out to Louie and Calibers to see if they wouldn't want to support New Mexico Rising as a thing, right?
If you have any ammo.
Anyway, so we have September 19th is the next show we have, and that will be Ethel Maharg. You guys know how to say her name?
I have no idea.
Well, she's running for governor, and we want to figure out how to pronounce her name as well as everything else about her. another gubernatorial candidate, which, I like hearing as a voter. I like hearing from all of these potential future governors.
Well, that's the way it is. Sometimes it's like I was on, doing the show last night, the other show, and talking to a friend of mine from Australia, and I didn't do much prep because sometimes it's just better to just ask stupid questions.
Yeah,
True.
absolutely. I mean, I didn't know a ton about Louie. I learned a lot about Louie today on this show, right? It's pretty good.
No, man. Definitely good guy.
Do you guys have anything else? Anything you want to shill?
Oh yeah, that's right. This is my sign here.
Yes.
There we go. Dad's glowy box thingy. I can't even do the dorky voice for it right now. It's just, you guys should go check these out. They're pretty cool. They'll spice up your house, spice up your room. Go get you a Thad's glowy box thingy and be the cool kid in your classroom.
All right. Well, thank you for that.
You can be the cool kid in your classroom. You might even be the cool kid in the gulag if this.
We need to start writing these ads down.
Yeah, exactly.
I was waiting for the meme. I guess we're not to that yet. Yeah.
Oh, boom! There you go.
So make sure you tune in every Wednesday at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 1 p.m. Wednesdays we're a little bit more freewheeling. It's a little bit of a radio, pirate radio, as they say. We're going to run it there until we have to go to the ham radio. And then Sundays, we come and try to be respectful, more so than maybe Wednesdays. But yeah, go check that out. Oh no. And make sure you remember, we had the most secure election of all time. All time. Don't you ever doubt it.
81 million.
81 million.
All right, take us out of here.
Most popular president of all time.
Thanks for watching, everybody.
Where's our stuff? Hold on, guys. I should be better.
You can find it. You can do it. Yeah. You can do it, Bachman. You got it.
Come on, Bachman.